Thank you for tuning in to Shed Kings. Today, we are going to check out a left side of a deer antler found in Illinois off of an 8-pointer that scores over 180 inches.
There are questions every hunter wants to know. The goal of this series is to examine giant shed antlers from all over the Midwest and beyond to answer one question: where were the antlers found? By knowing that, we can begin to understand more about deer, elk, and where they live outside of hunting season. And more importantly, how to find more shed antlers this spring. Thank you for tuning into Shed Kings. Be sure to hammer that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.
My name is Grant Putnam. I'm from Western Illinois, and I have been shed antler hunting for the past 7 years. I think that I've probably found somewhere in between 50 and 60 shed antlers all time, and my best year of shed hunting ever was a year that I found 18 antlers in one season. All right, here it is. The most interesting measurement or characteristic of this shed would be this G2 and G3 combination. If you can envision that this was sitting on a deer's head as well, this main beam just hooks up and goes what I think would have been straight off the deer's head. So the G2, this one right here, actually, I'm about 6'4", 6'5", so I've got pretty long arms, and this G2 right here is over 15 inches long, with two pretty gnarly fish hook style kickers coming off of it. And then right next to it, we've got another 10 plus inch G3. So this is, one of my coolest antlers, if not the coolest antler that I've ever found while shed hunting. All right, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and score this antler. So it's gonna be scored as a mainframe 8-pointer. So let's see what this side scores, then we'll double it. Then we'll give it a modest 16-inch spread and see what this deer would have scored had it been completely symmetrical on both sides with the 16-inch spread. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the G1 here. Again, like Garrett said in episode 1, we are not professional scorers by any means. This is just a very rough, gross score. And G1 is gonna be 6 6/8. The G2, which is, like I said, the coolest feature of this deer, 15 1/8. G3, this will be a little bit quicker to score than the last one from episode 1. So if you didn't check episode 1 out, we score a 200-inch deer's right side, and that was one of the sheds that Garrett found a couple years ago with Jesse on one of our turkey hunting leases. That one's 11 4/8. Now we'll get into these two abnormal points over here onto the side. Like I said, we're going for a gross score, so anybody that's a professional scorer, this is just for fun. It's 4 inches right on the mark. There's another kicker off this G2, which we're gonna measure. It's not quite as long as the first one there, but it's gonna be 2 5/8. And the cool thing about this deer antler is it doesn't have it's not a ton of mass. You know, you would expect a deer that's this big to have more massive bases, but it's really not quite the case with this deer right here. So I'm gonna kind of see where our heaviest part is, like right here, and this one is actually 4 6/8. This is 4 4/8. And this one is going to be 5 2/8, 3 4/8. About 26 6/8. So pretty long main beam. That would give me about a 185.5-inch 8-pointer. If, like I said, if we were to assume that this deer matches on both sides. What type of habitat did I find this antler in? I found this shed antler actually in between two food sources in a strip. So the interesting thing about this particular antler is the farms that Garrett and I hunt, we actually didn't ever have a picture of this buck on the hoof on a trail camera, never saw him on the hoof. So that's a true testament to food. And I think the most interesting and unique thing about never getting a picture of him, and this was only about 3 years ago that we found this, the most interesting thing I thought about it was, like I said, we didn't know that this deer existed, and it was near a late season food source, which would indicate to me that this deer went nomadic from wherever it was living onto one of our farms where we can shed hunt, and deposited this antler probably only less than 40 yards from one of our late season food sources. So I think that is probably the most interesting characteristic of this antler. And where I found it, like I said, it was a rolling hill. It was actually very, very close to a creek crossing. It's a smaller creek, but one that a deer would have to jump or kind of trot over to get over to the other side. And I found it right there, very, very close to that. So it kind of leads me to believe that he was possibly bedding in that strip of timber in between our two food sources. When he went to get up to go to the food source to the west, he dropped this antler off, and that's where we found it. So a true ghost. Like I said, we don't have any images, video of this deer, but I'm still jacked to have been able to find it nonetheless. I would say that the majority of the shed antlers that I find, along with my friends Garrett, Matt, and Jesse, the majority of the sheds that I find are in a bed. Lots of times when I find one antler, I'll find one or more antlers. It won't just be a single. Lots of times we're able to match up deer antlers where deer we believe are sleeping and went to bed. So by bedding areas, that could be a lot of different things. It could be under late season thermal cover, i.e. a pine tree, a cedar tree of some kind that holds a lot of heat. It could be on that south facing slope where all the snow has melted off. It could be anywhere on your farm that routinely deer bed at. That is typically where we find the bulk of our antlers. And in between those bedrooms and a late season food source, that's typically where I would say about 70% of our deer antlers are found. And the other ones are maybe just by dumb luck, kind of in the middle of the wide open in a place you wouldn't expect it. Maybe a deer has run out of food and it has run across the road to a different property and you find it in a ditch. It kind of just totally depends, but I would say that the majority of deer antlers that we find are near bedding or between the route from a bedroom of a deer and food. I think if I was to give another piece of advice to a person looking to find more shed antlers this year, my piece of advice would probably be to not get discouraged. Lots of times when I'm going shed antler hunting, there are times when it's feast or famine, meaning there are certain times that we're going out and looking for them that maybe we do get skunked. Maybe we only find just one shed antler, and after a day of covering, 6 to 10 miles, that is disappointing, but don't let it get you down, because typically where there is one deer antler, due to the nature of bucks grouping back up in the wintertime, you'll find more than one antler. So I feel like it's one of those things where if you can find one antler, you're bound to find quite a few more. So once you hit those honey holes, landmark them, think about why the antlers are there in your mind, and then you can have a spot potentially to go and find antlers every year based on the habitat that bucks like to live in during the late season. So that would be my piece of advice. Don't get discouraged, keep walking. Eventually, once you find one, you'll find more. So some of the other interesting sheds I have that I'm going to show to you right now actually are back-to-back match sets off of a deer that Garrett was able to kill with his bow back in 2000, way back in 2012. So we get a permission on this property, and the first year that we're out there hunting, pick up this massive set of 8-point antlers. With this kind of, minimal squirrel damage here, but kind of this interesting pinch in this blade right here. And these antlers are just heavy. That's the most striking characteristic feature of them. This is like your stereotypical bully buck, and the tines, the beams, everything is just heavy. And so Garrett actually ended up killing this deer 2 years after we found these sheds. So this was him as a 4-year-old, we believe. Then you'll notice when I pick this next setup, it's not going to look too much different. But here is the next year's set. We found them a little bit later, which is why they're all bleached out in white. And he's got like this kind of like little acorn drop tine going here. But you can tell a very, very similar frame. Again, just very heavy beams. If you can get an 8-pointer, you know, over that 150s mark, that's an exceptional 8-pointer. And this one does carry that just because he's got literal 6-inch mass measurements around both of the bases, and then 5, and then another 6, and then like 3 and some change. And Garrett finally actually killed this deer with his bow the year after this, but it's pretty cool that was able to find 2 back-to-back years match set of the same deer. And this is a deer that we called the Grade 8. He was a deer that never really left our farm. And like I said, it's crazy that when I hold these both up simultaneously, that he stayed very similar. You know, I know it's kind of tricky to see there, but he stayed very similar back-to-back years, and the year Garrett killed him looked almost identical. So it's pretty cool that not only Garrett was able to kill him, but we have 2 pretty good pristine match sets of this big old Illinois 8-pointer. So that is my most interesting set of sheds, other than the one I was able to talk about at the beginning. If you liked this episode, there's more where that came from. Check out the entire Shed Kings playlist on the Last Breath TV YouTube channel and subscribe so that way you never miss an episode.